Okay, so you want to buy a casino, a building where thousands of people walk in every single day and voluntarily hand you their money. No invoice required, no convincing needed. They line up for the privilege. It sounds like the cleanest business model ever invented. The house always wins, right? Bring in the tables, bring in the machines, sit back, and let human psychology do the rest. Here's the part that surprises almost everyone. In some of the biggest casino resorts in the world, the gambling floor isn't even the main source of profit anymore. Some of them would happily break even on the tables if it meant filling every hotel room upstairs. And the businesses that built empires purely on the casino floor, the old school model, have been going bankrupt for decades, sometimes spectacularly, sometimes in a single bad year. So what's actually going on? Let's start with what you think you're buying, and then get into what you're actually buying. First, the price of admission. A modern casino resort is not a card room with some slot machines bolted to the floor. It is one of the most expensive buildings a private company can construct. A large-scale casino resort with a hotel tower, convention space, restaurants, and a full gaming floor can run anywhere from $500 million for a mid-tier property to well over $3 billion for a flagship resort on a major strip. The Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas cost roughly $4 billion to build. The Marina Bay Sands in Singapore cost around $5.5 billion. These are not casinos with hotels attached. They are hotels, convention centers, retail malls, and entertainment venues that happen to have a casino floor somewhere inside them. Because in most of the world's major gaming markets, regulators will only grant you a license if you build all of it. That's the first thing nobody explains up front. You can't just build a casino. In almost every major jurisdiction, from Nevada to Macau to Singapore, the license itself is the scarce resource, not the building. Governments decide how many gaming licenses exist in a given market, and they almost never hand them out casually. In Singapore, there are exactly 2 integrated resort licenses in the entire country. 2. If you want a third, you need the government to decide the market can support one, and that decision might not come for another decade. In Macau, the government controls the number of gaming concessions directly, and when they came up for renewal in 2022, every single operator in the market had to renegotiate with the government or lose access entirely. This is the same scarcity logic you'd see in professional sports. A fixed number of seats at the table, and getting a new seat added means convincing an entire government that it's worth diluting everyone else's position. So the license is expensive to get, and it's not just expensive in money, it's expensive in obligation. Regulators typically require a minimum capital investment as a condition of the license itself. In Singapore, both integrated resorts were required to include convention centers, museums, theaters, and family attractions, not because gambling revenue needed them, but because the government wanted a tourism destination, not a casino. In Macau, licenses now come with formal requirements to invest in non-gaming attractions as a percentage of total spending. The message from every regulator is the same. We will let you build your casino, but only if you build everything around it too. Now let's talk about who's actually allowed to run one of these places, because this is where a lot of first-time investors get stopped cold. Getting a gaming license doesn't just mean approving your business plan. It means a background check on every major shareholder, every executive, sometimes every board member, that goes deeper than almost any other industry outside of banking and national security. Regulators investigate your financial history, your business partners, your sources of capital, and in many jurisdictions, they reserve the right to reject an applicant for reasons they don't have to fully explain. The logic is straightforward from their side. Casinos handle enormous volumes of cash. They're historically attractive to organized crime and money laundering, and a regulator who approves the wrong operator can end an entire career. So the vetting process alone can take 1 to 2 years, and it can cost millions of dollars in legal and compliance fees before you've built a single blackjack table. Let's say you've cleared all of that. You've got your license, you've built your resort, the doors are open. Now the real economics begin, And here's where the picture gets more interesting than most people expect. The casino floor operates on something called the house edge. Every single game is mathematically designed so that, over a large enough number of bets, the casino wins a small percentage of everything wagered. Not every hand, not every spin, but over millions of bets, the math is inevitable. On American roulette, the house edge is about 5.25%. On blackjack, played with perfect strategy, it can be under 1%, which is why casinos love players who don't play with perfect strategy. On slot machines, the house edge is typically somewhere between 4 and 10%, and slot machines are the real workhorses. In Nevada, slot machines alone generate close to 2/3 of total gaming revenue in many markets, more than every table game combined. Why? Because a slot machine doesn't need a dealer, it doesn't get tired, it doesn't take breaks, and it can run 24 hours a day, generating a mathematically guaranteed margin with almost no labor cost attached. This is the part that looks like the whole business. Guaranteed math, ruthless efficiency, money flowing in around the clock. But here's the trap that catches a lot of casino operators who think the gaming floor alone is the business. Big spenders, the players casinos actually want, the ones dropping tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars a night, don't play by the house edge in the way you'd think. These are called high rollers, or in industry terms, premium players, and casinos compete brutally to attract them. To get a premium player in the door, casinos offer what's called complimentary services, comped hotel suites, private jets picked up at the airport, 5-star meals, sometimes literally millions of dollars in credit, extended on the spot with minimal paperwork. The math still favors the house over enough hands, but the cost of acquiring and retaining that player can be enormous. And if that player wins big on a bad night for the house, or simply stops coming, the casino has given away a fortune in free luxury for a customer who generated nothing. This is exactly what happened to Revel Casino Hotel in Atlantic City. Revel opened in 2012, cost $2.4 billion to build, the second most expensive building ever constructed in New Jersey at the time. It was designed to be a glamorous, non-smoking, high-end resort, meant to attract a younger, wealthier crowd than the aging Atlantic City casino floor traditionally drew. It filed for bankruptcy within a year of opening. It filed for bankruptcy a second time the following year. By 2014, less than 2 years after its $2.4 billion construction, it closed entirely and sold for $82 million, roughly 3 cents on the dollar of what it cost to build. What went wrong wasn't one single catastrophic mistake. It was a building sized for a customer base that Atlantic City's market simply couldn't support, competing against a saturated regional market where nearby states had already opened their own casinos, pulling gamblers away before they ever needed to travel to the shore. Revel proves the same lesson that shows up across every asset class this channel has looked at. A building can be architecturally stunning, fully licensed, and mathematically favored on every game inside it, and still lose money if the demand underneath it was never really there. So if the gaming floor alone is this fragile, where does the real stability in this business actually come from? The answer, and this is the reframe that changes how you should think about this entire industry, is that the modern casino resort is not primarily a gambling business anymore. It is a hospitality and real estate business that happens to include a casino. Look at how revenue actually breaks down at the largest integrated resorts. At Marina Bay Sands in Singapore, gaming revenue is significant, but the property generates enormous income from hotel rooms, from one of the most photographed rooftop attractions in the world sitting on top of the hotel towers, from luxury retail leasing to brands that pay premium rent for foot traffic guaranteed by tens of thousands of daily visitors, and from a convention and exhibition business that fills the property with corporate guests who may never touch a gaming table. Convention business, in particular, is one of the most valuable and least discussed parts of this industry. A major trade show or corporate conference can fill thousands of hotel rooms for 3 or 4 consecutive nights, guaranteed, booked years in advance, completely independent of whether anyone gambles at all. That predictability is worth more to a casino operator's finance team than the volatility of the gaming floor, because a convention doesn't have a bad night the way a poker table can. Retail works the same way it does inside an airport or a shopping mall, and it's not a coincidence. Casino resorts are built using the exact same behavioral architecture: long walks through retail corridors between the parking structure and the gaming floor, no clocks visible anywhere so guests lose track of time, low ceilings and warm lighting near the tables to create a sense of intimacy and time compression, and constant subtle cues designed to keep a guest inside the building rather than stepping outside for a meal somewhere else. Every restaurant, every boutique, every spa inside that resort is capturing spending from a guest who might otherwise have spent nothing at all if they'd simply gambled and left. Now let's talk about costs, because this is where casino resorts become one of the most expensive properties in the world to simply keep the lights on. A large integrated resort can employ anywhere from 5,000 to over 10,000 people: dealers, pit bosses, surveillance staff, hotel housekeeping, security, food and beverage teams, entertainment production crews for in-house shows, and an enormous compliance department whose entire job is making sure every transaction on the gaming floor meets regulatory standards. Surveillance alone is its own operation. Modern casino floors run thousands of cameras simultaneously, monitored by trained staff around the clock, because regulators require documented proof that games are run fairly and that suspicious transactions get flagged and reported. This isn't optional overhead, it's a condition of keeping the license. Then there's the physical plant itself. A resort this size runs climate control across millions of square feet, 24 hours a day, because a casino floor never closes, not for holidays, not overnight, not ever. The lighting alone across a major strip property can cost millions of dollars a year. And because these buildings are built to stay visually current, luxury resorts renovate constantly. A property that looks dated loses premium guests to a newer competitor down the street, so operators are locked into a cycle of spending tens or hundreds of millions of dollars every few years just to avoid falling behind. And then there's the cost that almost sank the entire industry once already: debt. Casino resorts are financed almost entirely with borrowed money, often billions of dollars in construction loans, because no operator has $3 or $4 billion in cash sitting around. That debt needs to be serviced whether the gaming floor is full or empty. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, several major Las Vegas projects that had broken ground during the boom years found themselves with half-finished towers and construction loans they suddenly couldn't refinance. The Fontainebleau Las Vegas, a project that had already cost around $2 billion in construction, stopped mid-build in 2009 when its lenders pulled financing. The unfinished tower sat empty on the Strip for over a decade, sold, resold, and eventually reopened under new ownership years later at additional enormous cost. A half-built casino resort is one of the most useless assets imaginable. You can't lease it, you can't open it partially in most jurisdictions, and every month it sits unfinished. The interest on the construction debt keeps accruing with zero revenue coming in to offset it. Which brings us to the deepest structural risk in this entire business, the one that connects every other risk we've covered. Casinos are almost uniquely exposed to travel disruption, because unlike a shopping mall or a bank that serves a local population, a major resort casino depends heavily on people getting on a plane or driving a long distance specifically to be there. When travel stops, even temporarily, the entire revenue model stops with it, but none of the costs do. During the early 2020s, when global travel restrictions shut down tourism almost everywhere at once, Macau, the largest gaming market in the world by revenue, saw monthly gaming revenue fall by more than 90% compared to normal levels for an extended stretch. Properties that had been generating hundreds of millions of dollars a month were suddenly generating a small fraction of that, while payroll for thousands of employees, debt service on billions in construction loans, and the fixed cost of simply maintaining a building that size continued regardless. Several major operators had to raise emergency financing just to survive the period, taking on new debt at unfavorable terms to cover losses on properties that, under normal circumstances, were some of the most profitable buildings on Earth. So let's put the two scenarios side by side, because that's really what determines whether this business works. In the optimistic scenario, you own a resort in an established, well-regulated gaming market with a diversified revenue base, meaning gaming floor revenue is strong, but isn't the majority of total income. Your hotel runs near full occupancy most of the year. Your convention business is booked out well in advance, filling rooms independent of gambling activity. Your retail and dining operations capture significant spending from guests who came for the destination, not just the tables. In that scenario, the mathematical certainty of the house edge becomes almost a bonus on top of an already stable hospitality business, and margins can be extraordinary. Some of the most profitable integrated resorts in the world operate with earnings margins north of 30%. In the realistic bad scenario, you've built or bought into a market that's oversaturated, competing regional casinos have opened nearby, pulling away your local customer base. Your convention business is thin because your property isn't established enough to win the big bookings, and you're leaning heavily on the gaming floor and a handful of high rollers to cover your costs. Then a recession hits discretionary travel spending, or a competitor opens a newer, flashier resort down the road, or in the worst case, some external shock shuts down travel entirely for a period of months. Your fixed costs, the payroll, the debt service, the maintenance on a building the size of several city blocks, don't move. Your revenue does, dramatically, and unlike the gaming math on any single table, there's no house edge that protects the company itself from a bad year. So if you do decide to buy a casino, understand what you're actually buying. You are not simply buying a mathematically guaranteed edge on a few dozen games. You are buying an enormously expensive hospitality and real estate operation, licensed at the pleasure of a government that can add conditions whenever it likes, financed with debt that never pauses, and dependent on convincing people from somewhere else to travel specifically to spend money inside your building. The house edge is real, but the house also has to pay its own bills first, and on the nights nobody shows up to play, the math on the felt doesn't save you from the math on the balance sheet.